Is evolution real? What I mean by that is evolution the best explanation for where we all came from where life began? I have a definition for you of evolution from Wikipedia. According to Wikipedia on the internet, it says, evolution is the change in inherited traits of a population of organisms through successive generations. After a population splits into smaller groups, these groups evolve independently and may diversify into new species. Ultimately, life is descended from a common ancestry through a long series of these events, stretching back into the tree of life that has grown over 3,500 million years of life here on Earth. If you open your average textbook in high school today, your average textbook in a JC college, you're going to get some definition that's really similar to that. Evolution. Now, let's just look at some observable evidence. Because in my pursuits, I don't just want to believe something because somebody told me to believe it. I don't want to just believe something because everyone else believes it. I want to look at something and believe it because it is true. I want to follow where the evidence leads. And whatever is the conclusion of where the evidence leads, if that's where the evidence, as I follow it, if that's where the evidence leads, then that's what I'm going to believe based on observable truth. Now let's look at two areas. Let's look at the Tree of Life, Darwin's Tree of Life, and also Stanley Miller's 1950s experiment. The Tree of Life. If you open up, any textbook, science textbook today, you can look at the Tree of Life, and we see, on the Tree of Life, all these different branches. The fish becomes the snake becomes the frog becomes the rat becomes the rabbit becomes the fox, and so on and so forth. The monkey becomes the ape, inevitably the ape becomes the man. You follow the tree and all these different branches. We're supposed to have all come from a common ancestry. Now, the problem with this, and as you look at it, the problem with this is, where are all the transitional forms? The in-between stages. You look at over so many millions, supposedly, there's so many millions of years here on Earth. Well, there would be fossilized the in-between stages. What do I mean by that? There would be fossilized within the different strata of the Earth. There would be fossilized the in-between stages of when a rat became, a rabbit, when a rabbit became a fox. How come there's no transitional forms ever located or ever found? There's not one. Another thing is as we look at the Galapagos Islands, all the observations that Darwin made, his theory. Darwin used to, he has a degree in theology. Darwin and all of his observations on the Galapagos Islands, he looked at all these observations, and he studied, like, let's take for instance all the finches. The thing is what your science teacher will tell you, there's microevolution and there's macroevolution. Microevolution, it happens. Microevolution is adaptation. Macroevolution doesn't happen. You don't see one species jumping into another species. You don't see a rabbit becoming a fox, or a fox becoming a dog, or a dog becoming a deer, because it just doesn't happen. Microevolution happens, adaptation happens. That's what Darwin saw on the Galapagos Islands. He saw all the different finches, he saw all the different sizes of their beaks and all the different colors of the beaks. He saw microevolution at work, the species adapting to its environment. He didn't see the finches become a frog, or the finches become a snake, or the finches become a rabbit, because macroevolution doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. Also, let's look at Stanley Miller's experiment in the 1950s. What Stanley Miller did is, Stanley Miller took 4 different chemicals. He took ammonia, water, methane, and hydrogen. And what he did is he trapped these 4 different gases within an apparatus, a glass apparatus. And you know, he had an electrical current that would come onto the apparatus. And as these gases passed through the apparatus, what would take place is as he would increase the electrical current, what would be produced was amino acids, and these amino acids would be caught into the trap. And so, you know, as evolution looks at this experiment, and this experiment has been redone in 2000, you know, and this experiment has been redone, you know, but as this is supposed to be monumental for chemical evolution, this is supposed to be one of the monumental experiments that has taken place. But the thing is, and you observers, those that are very observant, the viewers that are listening, and also for all of us, there's a few problems with this. Well, what's the problems? Well, Stanley Miller was a man. And Stanley Miller, who the primitive Earth, how did he know what chemicals, what the composition of the atmosphere was 3,500 million years ago? He lived in the 1950s. How did he know what the primitive Earth's atmosphere was? Also, there was said to be lightning storms, and from this lightning generated, there was generated enough electrical current that the first cells were represented and produced from the primordial ooze. It produced the first signs of life. Well, how did he know? This is a man that lived in the 1950s. How did Stanley Miller know the amount of the electrical current that was present in the primitive Earth, and also the composition? See, the problem with this is he just didn't know. He went by speculation, and he added that into there. And plus, even if he did know what the composition was of the atmosphere, in his experiment, he only produced 11 of the 22 needed amino acids. He only produced 11. And also, he only produced amino acids. He didn't produce carbohydrates. He didn't produce complex carbohydrates. He didn't produce proteins. You know, in our study and looking at these facts, there's so much other evidence that you can look at, and it puts up a big red flag. It puts up a big question mark. I just don't want to believe something because somebody told me to believe it. You know what the better explanation for where life came from? The life in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Yeah, God. God created us. God created everything that's been made. As we look at everything that's been designed, you look at things that are designed, it had a designer. You look at a watch, you look at a car, you look at a building, you look at a factory, you look at a spaceship, you look at an airplane. You look at a satellite, you look at a space shuttle. It's been designed. Go take a look in the mirror right now. Next time you're in the bathroom, take a look in the mirror. You're 1,000 times more complex than any computer chip or any automobile. God created you that way. Well, if God created us, what does God want from me? What does God want from us? Well, you know what? God created us for His good pleasure. God created us so that we might have a meaningful relationship with God. But there's one problem. Well, what's the problem? Well, it's our sins that separate us from God. Sin, it breaks fellowship. You know, it's like this. If I was to try to call you, and there was no answer, I wouldn't be able to get through. The reason is because the line has been severed, and there's no way that I can get through. That line has to be reconnected somehow before that you'll ever pick up the other end of the telephone. See, our relationship with God has been severed, it's been broken because of sins. Because all sin separates us from God. All of us have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. But what Jesus did, why did Jesus die? Why did Jesus go to the cross? The reason Jesus died is so that we would be reconciled, that we could be reconnected with a relationship with God. What's that? A relationship. Many people have a religion. They go to church on Sunday, but God doesn't want that. God, going to church on Sunday is one thing. Going to church